everyone, I'm Kimberly Austin. Welcome to Rock Book Show. And today, by audio, my guest is Tom Beaujour, joining me from Hoboken, New Jersey. Right, Tom?
Yep.
Well, it's great to have you here. So, Tom and Christopher Scapoletti have edited this beautiful book from Guitar Aficionado. It's the collections. It's the most famous, rare, and valuable guitars in the world. Tom, how did this come together? Because this is a stunning collection.
We had been in the magazine doing a number of these collections for a while, and we just realized that we had a lot of unseen guitars that we hadn't run in the magazine because there were always space constraints, and B, that we had really just put together something that we wanted everyone to be able to see. Even people who aren't as perhaps like committed to the guitar as they would need to be to subscribe to a magazine. Like, this is almost general interest because the people involved and featured are so famous. So we figured we should really just put all of this stuff together so that it has a permanent home versus a magazine that appears and disappears. And then we added lots of stuff, so even people who have bought the magazine will be seeing new guitars that weren't in there.
It's a gorgeous, beautiful coffee table book, and there's more than 200 color photographs in here, many of them rarely seen and maybe even never before seen. And these great stories. The structure of this book is really nice, too. It's because it's not just the guitar, but it's the love of these guitars from the people who own them as well.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that every guitar had a story. And so even in some of the collections, we would go to people's houses like Elliot Easton or Eric Johnson or whatever, and they would have more guitars than we even photographed, and some of them were more valuable than the ones that we did photograph, but we always wanted to make sure that there was a story connected to the instrument.
Rick Nielsen wrote the introduction for this book, and actually one of the best stories in the book, too, about how he found guitars back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, and there's another interview and collection in there with Randy Bachman, and those guys, along with a couple others, I want to say Joe Walsh and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, all of these guys knew in the late 60s and early 70s, they had this sense that these guitars that had been made in the 50s in America were cooler than what was, available now. And by now, I mean 1968. And so these guys were all touring and working and just spending all of their downtime before looking for guitars when they were on tour. And this was before the internet. So they would, be looking at want ads and papers and this, that, the other thing, and really driving out to like the weirdest places, in the whole world to find guitars. And, Rick Nielsen says like under people's beds, in car dealerships. And that's really what it was. People had bought these things and they were just sitting around, and there was not really any demand for them except from like this very select group of people who thought that they were cool and that perhaps someday they would be valuable. So yeah, you ended up going to very, very strange places and interacting with people who had no idea what they had, and yeah, farms in the middle of nowhere. And I think it was probably in a way a much more exciting time to collect guitars, because now anything you want, you can just go on the internet and find it and buy it, whereas there's everyone has like a little adventure attached to it.
Yeah, and I love the one with the 1963 Guild Merle Travis.
Oh yeah, that's he. Like, the thing with Rick is I've interviewed him over the last 20 years. I've probably interviewed Rick 20 times, maybe more, 30 times, and because he's absolutely my favorite guitar player, and his level of enthusiasm for guitars has not waned at all. And I mean, and that one is proof positive. Like, he wanted this guitar. He knew that these guitars existed, these Guild Merle Travis guitars. There's a photo of Pete Townsend with one. There's, and that there were maybe 3 in the world. And he finally found one at Gruhn's, at like you were saying, at Gruhn's Guitars in Nashville. And the guitar had been completely destroyed. A woman had been very angry at her husband and thrown it into a fireplace and just smashed it. And it was sitting at Gruhn Guitar in Nashville in pieces. So much so that I don't think George Gruhn really wanted to even sell it, because he didn't actually consider it to be a guitar anymore as much as just a pile of wood. And Rick bought it. He found the original craftsman. He had them completely rebuild the thing, repaint the thing, photograph the repair. And this is the kind of thing, like, this guy, he really cares. You know what I mean? He probably, I don't know how much he spent repairing the guitar, but it was, many, 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 many thousands of dollars. And but it goes to this thing that these people have, the guitar players in the book as well as the non-guitar players, this passion, like, I need this instrument. I will do anything, within my power to find it. And that's how guitar collectors are. I'm sure it's how all collectors are.
And then there's David Crosby, who was saying he's not really a collector, but he picked his instruments because they helped him play.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the instruments in here are tools. And that's what I try and get across also in my introduction. I have a second introduction in the book that I've seen a lot of these guitars and picked them up and, carried them from one room to another during these photo shoots and, knelt over them to make sure there's no shadows. And they're amazing as pieces of history, but they are also just these tools, and it's really about what the musician did with the instrument versus the instrument. At least for this book, that's what we wanted to focus on, is like, these are tools that have been used to create the music that we all love. And it's not, there are other books about valuable instruments and, like, this guitar, there are only 12 of them and it's worth, $50,000 and blah, blah, blah. And it has red, this and that. This is more about, this is the guitar. When you turn on your radio, this is the one that you're hearing for this song. And this is how the guy got it. Like, this is the guitar Lindsey Buckingham plays on all of those Fleetwood Mac hits. Here it is, in a huge 2-page spread. You can look at it. You can see the dings. You can imagine him. And sometimes, like you're saying, like David Crosby, you would think that they would have almost more to say about it. Like, oh, this thing is magic, and I take it out of the case, and it floats into the air and right into my hands, and it produces wonderful music. And no, Lindsey Buckingham is sort of like, man, I found this at Guitar Center. Or David Crosby's like, yeah, I found this thing here or there, and it's not the most expensive, but I used it to write these songs. And it's about these people's working relationships with their instruments.
Yeah, and Neil Giraldo was telling that great story too. Just a $99 guitar, and he wrote some of the biggest hits on it, and it got stolen and came back. It was crazy.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, and that's what the thing is with these guys. These are working guitars. They're not, most for the most part. They have been used to create, like, our collective conscious of like this music. And to me, that's what's so cool about them. And they're generally not out on tour. We really went after these instruments that are historic, and not every one of these guitars is up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or in the Hard Rock. We really made sure that we were finding new legendary stuff.
That's so cool. And as we've talked about, the photographs of these instruments in this book, it just captures a new essence of them. As you said, you can see every little ding, every little sticker that wore off, every, when it was Jimmy Vaughn who put his name in the guitar with the bottle opener. It's awesome. And there's a beautiful picture of James Hetfield's guitars that with the car in the back. It's just gorgeous.
No, I mean, we really, look, I'd be perfectly happy not, and having written probably half or 3/4 of this book myself, I feel entitled to say this. Like, if somebody just wants to look at the pictures in this thing, that's fine with me. They are great pictures. They didn't happen by accident. We're like going to Randy Bachman's house to shoot all the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive guitars. We took a little single engine plane and we're carrying as much photo equipment as we can on it. It was really like Raiders of the Lost Ark for some of it. And, always making sure that we could get these photographs, and it also makes the photographs unique because they're not, to get there, to get the pictures is months of preparation. So we really, that's, it's not, it's not by accident that the photos are good. We really focused on that.
And you also have this gallery of other legendary guitars as well at the end.
Yes. I mean, because we we are part of the Guitar World family, and over the years, Guitar World, which I used to work for as well, has been shooting, guitars that again are not available to be seen. Like Jimmy Page's guitar, Jimmy Page still has it. Eddie Van Halen's guitar, Eddie Van Halen still has it. You can't go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and see them, and so we figured we had these photographs and these stories about these other guitars sort of in our archive, and that it would be crazy not to also feature those because we have the same quality images. And, they are, some of the ones in the back are really like the most legendary instruments of all time. I mean, Jimmy Page's Les Paul, I don't even know what could be valued at. It's like the guitar. It's the hard rock guitar of all hard rock guitars. Maybe it's worth $10 million, 20, who knows? Like these are things that are like irreplaceable and just that fit with sort of mission of the book.
We kind of touched on this, but I'm curious to know what you think, Tom. Is there one era would it be the 50s that made the best guitars?
If I had to, I would say like 50 for electric guitars, because and it's, somebody would challenge me on this. The most desirable guitars would definitely be like 55 to 64. That's where the sort of most desirable electric guitars were made. That's sort of the magic era. Arguably there are instruments that are as good being made now. And like, Rick Nielsen likes to say, and I don't know if it's in the book or not, but he certainly said it to me a number of times, is, not every guitar from that era was great. Back in when he was starting to buy guitars from 1957 in, 1968, so only 10 years later, they would look at some of them and just be like, man, this one's kind of crappy. Like they were just used guitars at the time. So the guitars didn't all become these magically great things until years later when somebody decided that they were collectible. But the golden era is really the late 50s and early 60s for both Fender and Gibson. For the acoustic guitars, the Martin guitars, of which there are many in the book as well, it's sort of the magic era is earlier, like the years immediately following World War II.
Gotcha. So for those electric guitars, what was it about that time period? Was it the wood that they were using? What was it?
There was, I mean, the wood is one thing that can never be replicated because it's all gone. You look. There's stories, and if you look in the news even about how difficult it is now to get, the neck wood on a lot of these guitars, the fretboard wood was Brazilian rosewood, even on sort of entry level guitars, because nobody, in 1950, no one's thinking like, oh, this stuff is gonna, run out. And so the quality of the mahogany and of the rosewood and the ebony used was just superior because there was so, we hadn't used it all up. Also, it's just the way the guitars have aged, and the craftsmanship at the time was really good. But a lot of it also has to do with the historical context of them. It's that the guitars from the late 50s are the guitars that subsequently in the 60s Eric Clapton used and all of these guys used. So they are just the building blocks of rock and roll. And so it's as much quality as we like to say the mojo of them, which is just that they are of this time and place, and they were used by artists who, there's not going to be another Eric Clapton. It's a combination of the actual instrument and sort of just the history around them that makes them these great, instruments. And I mean, I have to say there are really spectacular ones. Again, is every guitar that was made in 1958 better than a guitar that was made, 3 years ago? No, but the history and the context is always going to be different.
Then I'll ask you a question I actually asked Brad Talinsky from Guitar World. If one of these artists isn't looking, which one of these guitars do you put in your car?
Ooh. For me for me personally, or to resell? That's the question.
Oh, would you like to answer both? That's fine.
If I was going to, if there was just one that I wanted to put on, display in a room in my house that no one would ever see, for me it would be Rick Nielsen's checkerboard guitar, just because to me that's as a Cheap Trick fan, that's the coolest guitar ever made. Probably if it was to buy a house with, it's probably Jimmy Page's #1, or the Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein guitar.
Yeah, and I may have to pick the K. Barney Kessel Jazz Special.
The Jimmy Vaughn?
Oh,
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
so beautiful. And I actually had never seen this guitar before, so it just took my breath away.
That's a wonderful guitar. I would have to have that checkerboard guitar. Like, it is, to me, it is like it's beat up and stuff, but it is. I've seen it on stage so many times, but and that's the thing. Everybody will have a different one. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I know exactly that Rick Nielsen one, and I've seen it many times myself on stage. Always a good show, and still amazing out there playing live.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Tom, thank you so much for being here. This book is incredible. Again, it's called Guitar Aficionado, The Collections, the most famous, rare, and valuable guitars in the world. Absolutely stunning. Highly recommend it.
Thank you.